sure. Fortunately today, that's what you're here to learn from Jenn has avoided this trap over the years by using SEO data and insights and then applying that to product features and roadmaps that people actually want based on searches they're actually doing. So if you want to avoid these mistakes, make sure you tune in today and you're about to learn a lot of really valuable information. Here.
All right, so I am Jen, and I'm going to talk to you about improving your product or services using SEO. So a bit about me. I've been in this for a little over 10 years now. I've worked in-house, I've worked in agencies, I've worked on a number of different verticals. I understand the space. And I think this technique kind of came about when I was in-house. My prior SEO experience is in brand strategy, and so I think that's kind of seeped into my SEO world, so I'm always thinking about brand strategy when I'm thinking about SEO. And so it became really apparent to me that SEO is way more than the website. This is valuable insights. These are people literally telling you exactly what they want to know. Like this is like a personal diary that we get to look at every single day. So we know what people want because they're searching for it. And, you know, hobbies. I like dinosaurs. I like gaming. I like wine. If you like those things, you should come talk to me. So I'm calling this technique off-label SEO. Why am I calling it off-label SEO? Kind of like with prescriptions, there may be an intended use for it, but there are some off-label uses that are also very effective. The run-of-the-mill use of SEO is kind of your basic pillars. You have your on-site content, you have technical, you have off-site. Now we have AI optimization, but this is taking it out of that space and kind of working backward because this initial strategy isn't going to touch the website until way later. So we are doing stuff prior, a lot of foundation building. So in practice, this can be used, it's honestly, it can be used any way that you want. The sky is the limit. You're going to be using the search data to help innovate on your products and services at your company. It can be inspiration for new features. It can help develop names for products, services, new capabilities. I'm sure we've all been in a situation where there's a new product coming down the line that is not using layman's terms in how it's named because we had to be clever. And it doesn't do very well. So let's just call it what people call it. I don't know. And I think it's also great because you can discover audiences, regions, untapped areas that people are clearly interested in your business and what you provide, but you're not currently reaching them. So, that got a little caught off. So these are our example companies, so I don't have to call any companies I worked with in the past out. We have a lot of different varieties here. We have our retail e-com, Whisker Biscuits. They make a cat treat, if it's not apparent. I do own cats, and I love them, so we're going to talk about that. We have Rendezvous. This is a communication and collaboration platform, very similar to something I'm sure all of you use on a day-to-day basis. And we're going to talk about their video conferencing product. Then we have Novalis, a standard run-of-the-mill sedan. These are the 5 steps. They're pretty straightforward, and I'll break down kind of what goes into each of them, but we're going to learn everything. We're going to do a competitive analysis. We're going to find the gaps, the search interest, and then we're going to share our findings. You don't need much, just need a keyword research tool, a search engine, and if it becomes part of what you find, you may need some kind of localization tool if you don't already have a translation management system with your website or your client. Might be something you want to look into if there's a region or language that you want to expand to. So step 1, we're going to learn everything. Sounds daunting. Y'all have probably already done a lot of this. So you want to learn everything about what your product or service offers. Talk to your PMMs, talk to your sales teams, understand what is it like every single piece that you provide. So you'll want to know who are your target audiences, who are the ones that they consider most important, where are you providing your services, and what are the capabilities. So these are our examples for our 3 different products here. So for Whisker Biscuits, we have all of the, different features you'd expect from a cat tree. For our software, the audiences is what we're going to look at for gaps, and they target business meetings, enterprises, HR interviews, run-of-the-mill. And we're going to look at advanced features for the car because hopefully it has all of the features you'd expect: radio, seatbelts, all of those. But advanced features, I think, is where we can really move the needle. Step 2, competitive analysis. This is going to be the bigger step for sure. You've probably already done a lot of this, so hopefully that's taken care of. But you want to do the same thing you did for your products, but now for all your competitors. You want to understand every single feature they offer, all of their solutions, where they're targeting, who are their audiences. But you also don't want to limit yourself to maybe, I feel like when you're working with PMMs, there's usually only like a golden 3 of competitors, but we're all SEOs. We know that maybe the top brand isn't the one that's ranking, so we want to do a big pool of competitors. So this is our set of competitors for our examples. We have some niche competitors when it comes to our cat tree, Catastrophic Creations, Habitat Haven, and then the usual suspects: Amazon, Chewy, PetSmart. For Rendezvous, we have all those other video conferencing platforms like Zoom and Teams and WebEx, but we also have some more niche options like Riverside and Descript that kind of hone in on more podcasting capabilities. And then we have all of the typical car brands you'd expect. Now we find the gaps. This is the fun part. So now that you know what the competitors offer, what you offer, you cross the 2. And if you have access to the product, it is helpful to, maybe you see that a competitor is claiming they offer this certain function. You can actually go into the product and see if you can recreate it. Sometimes it's not as evident from your product team that this is offered, but it might be there, even if it's kind of funky. So you want to go through, do the same process, and once you have your gaps, you're going to look at what you can do about dealing with this. We have our features for the cat tree. For audiences, we noticed that people are using the platform for podcasting, but we don't offer any podcasting specific features or catering to that, so that might be worth going after. And then we noticed that there were some advanced features that some of the other car makers are providing that we don't, that sound interesting. Now we attribute search interest to all of them. This is the quickest part, and it's very fun. So you take a look at all the different terms. You're going to want to look at different variations, and I would not neglect competitors. So if they're looking for cat trees on Amazon, then you want to include that, because even though it's on Amazon, it could be you, and it's still interest in that product. So as we could see, some of the different gaps have a lot of search volume, but we don't offer these things, so we can't write content about it. So we want to share with the other teams what we found. This is where you're going to show them exactly how impactful search interest is. So if this is something that people want related to our offerings, then why don't we add it? Why don't we take care of this? Why don't we start targeting this audience? Why don't we translate for this language? So this is how you're going to convey it to them. They may not be as familiar with SEO and organic. A lot of product managers aren't. So there might be a bit of a learning curve. But just explain to them that if people are searching for it, there's clearly an interest for it. So some tips are, it only takes one person to agree. A lot of times, product managers can be tricky to convince, especially if you have something like a car, that it's going to take time to implement a feature like this. But if you can convince one person, then you'll have the data to show the other teams that this is worth pursuing. So just a rough timeline. The first step, depending on how much information you have and how much your team has, should be relatively quick. The second step with competitors can be quite long, depending on how many competitors you have in your space. I tend to go a little bit overboard on competitors just because I find it fun to kind of look at all of them and see what they do. And step 3 is also a little bit tricky because there's a lot of cross-checking, but step 4 is fast, step 5 is medium. But the most important thing is you have to factor in after implementation. And like I said, with a car, it's going to take longer to get this added, and you're only going to see the results once it is added to your product or service, because that's when you can add something to the website about this. So typical results is, as I'm sure you're all familiar, rankings after 2 or 3 months, and conversions after roughly about 6, but you might see them a little bit earlier. So, track the different gaps related to the keywords that you found for search volume, and this will be how you can measure both on conversions as well as rankings. So this is what you report back to the lovely teams that have been collaborating with you on this. Here are just some examples of results that I've seen from using this method, and there's a lot of different ways to measure success in this. For example, out of the 35 feature gaps that I found, we were able to get 18 of them filled. We saw increases in organic leads and awareness. Both were really important. We noticed that there were a lot of our customers that had left for more niche products, and we were able to get back some of that lost revenue. And we saw a big increase in our rankings in the top 10. So all of this data was so helpful to convince other product teams to work with us. And then we started becoming best friends. So some constraints are, like I've mentioned a couple times, some implementation is going to take longer than others. The other is the product teams typically aren't as familiar with SEO. They might not even be as familiar with marketing. So it's a fun journey, kind of explaining to them the importance and what it is and why it matters. And there can be a lot of variables at play. When you get this addition added, it can be tricky to see how much of it is directly from organic, but typically if you're tracing it back to the content you added, it shouldn't be too difficult to parse out, depending on how you do your reporting. So the best place to begin is start with newer products or services. They're usually not as fleshed out as the older contenders. So there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. And start asking all the marketing and sales teams what they think should be added. What are the issues they're noticing? What are customers mentioning? And then start building relationships with the product managers and all the other associated teams. So if you want to start this process, here's 5 things you can do next week. First one is decide on what product or service you want to start with. Seems simple. May or may not be. We'll find out. And start connecting with those stakeholders, the product managers, the PMMs, the sales teams, the brand team, the social team. Ask them what people are asking for, what they mention, what's coming up on the roadmap. That's the next bullet. It's understanding that roadmap, and hopefully once you get connected with that product team, they'll be looping you in on future updates so that you can help them prepare, maybe reprioritize. Start compiling your competitors. Just work on it a little bit each day. It can take a while. And set your benchmarks, because that's everything that you're going to track against. So set them now. But that is my presentation. Hopefully you found it helpful.